Hi, come on in. Oh, there's George, being a good dog on the hearth there. Hi, come and join me. I've just lit up. I hope you don't mind. We'll just get this one going again. This is a really beautiful little Peterson with a silver spigot. I just love this. It's they in the Great War, when the soldiers took their pipes out there, they used to get broken because, you know, life in the trenches, and they used to use old the metal cylinders of bullet cases to fix the stems where they'd broken. It turned out that they could make a fitting that was just, you could take it out even while you were smoking. It was wonderful. It was better than the original. So Peterson took them up on that and made these lovely silver spigots on top of the pipes. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. What you find me doing here is correcting proofs. These are the proof pages. Let me show you. I love the way they're set up. You get this little, you get a big sheet, but the indentations show you what your book is going to look like. There's the contents, and you have to go through every page and look at it and see if anything needs correcting. So in one way it's a chore, but in another way it's one of those rare chores that is an absolute pleasure, because it's the final stage. When you finish doing this and you send these corrected proofs off, the next thing that's going to happen is that you're going to have a book in your hand, which was once a pile of papers like this. Now, I'm using this as an example. This is my book, In Every Corner Sing, and it's subtitled A Poet's Corner Collection. And whereas I'm normally publishing collections of poetry, this was my first collection of little essays, little prose pieces, little personal, familiar essays, rather in the tradition of Charles Lamb and William Hazlitt and G.K. Chesterton, and going right back, if you want to go much earlier, Samuel Johnson and Steele and Addison, a tradition I'm very glad to be part of. And it says A Poet's Corner Collection because it's based on my column, The Poet's Corner, in Church Times. And this one was called In Every Corner Sing. This one is called Heaven in Ordinary. Both of those phrases, of course, come from the poetry of George Herbert, whom, as you know, I absolutely love. And what they are is they're little short reflective pieces. And I chose Heaven in Ordinary because quite often they're ordinary things, just going out for a walk, seeing the dew on the grass, picking up an old briar pipe, sitting in your study and looking at your books, talking to someone over a stile in a village, standing on the bridge over the river. But any of these occasions, if you give them real attention, are capable of becoming, as it were, not only beautiful in themselves, but in some senses translucent. So I'll take a break from correcting the proofs, and maybe if you indulge me, I'll just read you the little essay, which is the preface to all the other essays. I've actually corrected this one, so you can see I've written the odd little correction in here. I'll read it to you with the corrections. And this, in fact, this preface, because of what it is, will tell you what's going to happen in the book. The book itself, I sent off the completed manuscript in early April. I've got the proofs now, which I need to send back in a couple of weeks. And then, all being well, the book will be born into the world and available in October. So that's the gestation period, as it were. In human life, we have a comparatively brief conception and a fairly long gestation. In books, it's a much longer conception, as it were, perhaps a shorter gestation. Anyway, here we go. Preface. It's been a pleasure to gather these short essays, written week by week, reflecting on the little incidents of life, the occasional hints and glints of insight that shimmer into being with a change in the light or a shift in one's own perspective. Most of these essays touch on places and experiences in the common run of things, rather than the far-fetched or exotic. The sound of church bells, a journey through the villages of Suffolk, a parish outing to Great Yarmouth. They touch on the pleasures of turning the pages of a familiar book, watching the motes of dust dance in a sudden shaft of sunlight, pausing for a moment to watch the progress of a village cricket match. The ordinary things, often unremarked on in an unremarkable life. And yet, my experience in writing, in pausing to give these things attention, in seeking to sound them out into language and catch a little of their transience in a net of words, has brought me back time and again to George Herbert's telling phrase, heaven in ordinary. As I reflected in the little essay that gives this book its title, all of us who have read Herbert's poem and savoured this phrase have an immediate sense of what he means. That prayer itself sometimes lifts a veil and allows us to see the ordinary and everyday, transfigured for a moment, to glimpse the temporal made suddenly lucid and lucent with a touch of eternity. The phrase heaven in ordinary always seems to summon that other famous phrase of Herbert's which we sing together in church. A man that looks on glass, on it may stay his eye, or if he pleaseth, through it pass, and then the heavens espy. Just for a moment, the glassy surface of the world, dusty and familiar, is cleared and cleansed. Something shines through, and we have a brief anticipation of St. Paul's great hope for us all, that although now we see through a glass darkly, one day we shall know as we are known. One day we shall see face to face, and the face we shall see is the face of love. So I have two hopes for this little book. The first is, of course, that you will enjoy my own small glimpses of heaven in ordinary, that you will savour with me some simple pleasures, and delight with me in seeing how much remains of the past, how much survives in turns of phrase, in the lie of the land, in the streets of our village and the pews of our churches, and on the shelves in our studies, to nurture the present. That you will have pleasure and even gain some insight in gazing with me at the ripples on a pond, enjoying the fall of snow or supping a pint in an old pub. But secondly, I do hope that when you put the book down, you will be encouraged to go out yourself with a more leisurely step, a more observant eye, an inclination to notice and to savour those little glimpses of heaven in ordinary that open up to us everywhere. Finally, I should remark that almost all these pieces were written before the coronavirus crisis came upon us, and indeed I could have filled a whole book with pieces written in that sense BC. But I have chosen to end the book with two pieces that touch on the new reality. A message from Wuhan tells of how I heard from someone isolated there before our own isolation had ever been imagined, who had found her faith strengthened and deepened by the example of Julian of Norwich, an expert on self-isolation if ever there was one. It was good to know that however novel this virus may be, we have been here before, and our faith has the resources to help us cope. And in the final piece of this book, which comes from the first Easter in lockdown, and takes John Donne's Death Be Not Proud to give us a note of courage and defiance. Like Julian of Norwich, John Donne saw more than his fair share of poison, war and sickness, but he could still fling this great defiance in the face of death. As we move into a new phase of our history and our Christian witness, I wanted to end my book on that note of defiance, for it is Christ's defiance, and it is ours. So that's how the preface finishes, and I must make my way through the rest. And in a sense, one of the pleasures will be to relive for myself the moments that I tried, as I said in this preface, to catch, whose transience I tried to catch in a net of words. Thanks for dropping by.